So every once in a while we feel, aren't we perfect? Aren't we great? Where does that come from? Let's continue our discussion of how Hashem showed us that He created this entire universe in order to create the perfect being, the human being created on the sixth day. And in order to create the perfect being, He had to find the perfect balance so that this being would be able, in a world that's balanced at a 50-50, he should be able to, on one hand, allow himself to be influenced by the world around him, or choose to do the right thing. In order to do that, he had to create a being that would have something that nothing else in this universe has. The knowledge to know right from wrong. No animal has that, nothing has that. Moreover, you can say the essential difference between humans and any other being in this universe is that we have the ability to know right from wrong. But how? How in such a shallow world, earthly world, could He make such a human being? And the most amazing, unbelievable thing happened. He said, I'm going to create this being in my image. A perfect being combined with a heavenly soul and an earthly body in the image of God Himself. What is that image? God that can create and destroy universes, build and ruin. That's the power of a human being. That's the power of every one of us. We can build worlds and we can ruin them. With our actions, we create and we destroy. That is the power of a human being, and that is the perfect human being. Carrying that responsibility, knowing that our choices and our decisions have such a powerful impact, that is the perfect human being. But let's go back to that thought that we started with. That idea that we have sometimes in the back of our mind of how great we are. There was a problem. Hashem in His wisdom saw that if He would allow this human being to be able to have all these powers, up to and including the ability to create new human beings all on his own, a terrible thing would happen. He would tell himself at some point, I am perfect. I really can create new human beings. So wait, maybe I am the master. Maybe I am no servant at all. Had he allowed the human being to have all these powers and be able to be by himself and recreate new human beings, that human being would eventually tell himself, I am master. So Hashem split him in half and now said, you have a new responsibility. You have a responsibility to reconnect with your other half, to work on that connection to become one again, and together choose to serve. With that second half is the help that works against him, against his fault of thinking or potential of thinking that he is master. That was the combination of an Ezer Kenegdoi, of how Hashem split the human being into two halves that have to come together again in order to again become the perfect human being, the actual perfect human being that can then choose right from wrong, that can then choose to serve and not to think of himself as master. And so, Hashem created those two beings. And on the eve of the sixth day, finally, the world, its purpose, and those who are supposed to fulfill it were created. And of course, we know what happened next. The first test, the first challenge, the only challenge. Will you be able to survive the test of being a servant and not a master? Of understanding that you need to listen as a servant, you need to follow as a servant, or be a master and think for yourself. And of course, we know they failed. And because of that, the world changed. The balance was changed forever. We now have a world that went from a 50-50 balance between good and evil, between right and wrong, to a new world. A world where the human beings in it are not perfect anymore. But the mission, the purpose never changed. More than that, the responsibility became even greater, because now there was a world that needed fixing. And who could fix it? Only those new human beings. Those human beings who are imperfect, who are actually far from perfect, but they have the ability still to choose right from wrong. If they only remember what the Nefesh HaChaim tells us. B'Tselem Elokim, the image of God, is literally, it's not an idea, it's a literal fact. When a person, a human, does actions in this world, he creates and destroys worlds in the universe. That is the power that we have. And that power we can use to serve, and with that fulfill our purpose in this world. That is exactly what we're here for. And now, as discussed in the preview, we should try, and we will try, to have this discussion from two perspectives. The perspective that we're building up with an idea from the ground up, from the beginning, which we will continue in the next episode. And the perspective of how are we supposed to deal with this emotionally, mentally. And for that, I would like to discuss a question that came up. How am I supposed to feel that all I am doing is just as a servant? Shouldn't that make me feel like I don't mean anything? Shouldn't that make me feel like I don't matter at all? And that's something that we will discuss in the coming episodes. But to start, imagine being told by an employer, or if you're the employer, imagine telling your employee to go do a very specific thing. Go buy a specific brand of coffee. And that employee goes to the store and looks for that coffee. If they find the coffee, they buy it, they bring it back. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. And they can feel like they did exactly what they were supposed to do. Moreover, imagine that the store did not have that coffee. And the employee tries another store, or another store, and another store. And he comes back empty-handed. Still, he can feel, I did what I had to do. When a person is able to have that feeling, they don't need anything else. If I can walk around knowing I did exactly what I was supposed to do, that's all a person needs in this world. And the only way a person can feel that way is if they can look at themselves as a servant of a master doing their master's will. Because as soon as somebody thinks of himself as the master, there is a lot of questions. There is a lot of doubts. Maybe I should have bought a different brand of coffee. Maybe I should have gone to a different store. Maybe I should have bought tea. As soon as somebody is a master, there are many questions. Because a master should have many other choices and responsibilities. But a servant, all a servant needs to do is his master's will. Now, imagine, take this to a next step. Imagine being a servant of a king, of a great king. Imagine the feeling of accomplishing the will of the great king. Imagine the feeling of knowing that even this small servant can provide joy to the great king. Now that's something we should all want to have, because that is true happiness. Knowing that I, as a small servant, can do a small physical action in a far-off land, far away from a place where you can see the king's power, and there serve the king, and know that that will bring joy to the king. There's nothing better than that, and there's nothing clearer than that. When a person sees that, feels that, there is no doubt. There is no room for challenges, for worry, for questions. There is just pure happiness from knowing I did what I had to do. And that's all that matters. Thank you for joining me again in this discussion. And hopefully, this will help you in your journey. And if you have any comments or questions, please do send them in. Thank you.